Hey, Jamie Stenhouse here, currently in Adelaide, and today I'm going to be explaining which processes you should begin creating first for your company, which one should you be prioritizing, and which one should you leave and ignore for as long as possible. Now, the answer is probably going to surprise you, as it does for all of our clients as they start going through the Dream Team Intensive. However, there's a very strong reason as to how we prioritize processes in the way that we do. And you're going to see that here today in this training video. So, before we start, ensure you do like and subscribe. Of course, it does really help out the channel and it means a lot to me. So, let's begin breaking it down. Typically, companies will start with the most longest, the most urgent processes, right? So if they are a long process, we can assume that they're quite complex, right? There's a lot of moving parts to that process. And if a process is urgent, then we can assume that of course that process is quite important. That kind of makes sense in terms of if you own a company, you should be creating your processes in the order of the most longest and the most complex, right? Because these are probably the most heavy duty, the most annoying processes, the ones your team get hung up on, the ones you're probably spending the most amount of time on. However, if you start creating processes against the most longest, the most urgent tasks and procedures and duties, you will be doing it incorrectly. The order in which you should be prioritizing your processes should be the most shortest, the most recurring processes before you even think about approaching the most longest and the most urgent. And the reason behind that is, of course, in order to create a long process, right, that has a lot of moving components in that. So you need to be a highly skilled process engineer, and you need to know what the hell you are doing before you create that process. And typically, if a company is just about to embark on creating processes, then they're probably pretty new at the skill and the art, right? Because many companies think that a checklist, a screen recording, a few screenshots is a process, or some flowchart is a process. These are not processes, these are components of a process. So when companies begin creating processes, they think to themselves, okay, well, let me start against the most urgent thing, because that is the thing that needs to be completed, and the most longest process, because that is draining a lot of my time and energy. However, that is wrong, as I have just said. You should be instead going for the most shortest and most recurring. So the reason for that, again, is that if the process is long, there's probably a lot of moving parts in that. Therefore, you need to have a high degree of process engineering skill to create those correctly. And if it is a new process and it is a urgent process, then probably it's really important to the company. So if you get that thing wrong and it's a important / urgent process, it's not going to be good for the company. Maybe you lose profit, maybe you upset your clients, maybe it causes some issues with your customer support or your prospecting, right? So you don't start with the most longest, the most urgent processes, because they're long, you need skill, and if they are urgent, then they're probably important, so therefore you cannot get them wrong. Alongside that, long processes take longer to build, right? And if you are just beginning in your process engineering journey, you don't have a lot of time probably to sit around and optimize a process, sort out the triggers, engineer the quality controls, right? Decide if it's a before and after process framework, or maybe an isolated input process framework, right? You probably don't have time to decide all of these things. So the answer as to which processes should you be designing above all of the other ones is, of course, your most shortest, your most recurring processes, processes. Now the reason for that is if it's recurring, that means that after you complete it, you're now going to be generating a recurring ROI on your time. Right? You don't want to start out with a long drawn out process that might only get used twice per week, or even worse, twice per month. Right? You want to start out with the most common processes, because quite typically, I don't know about you, but I know for myself and all of our clients, they used to lose a lot of their time through the whole day, not from a large project, but from these small recurring things they do each day, right? They have to answer emails, they have to check the cash flow, they have to send out invoices, they have to approve quotes, right? It is all these small tasks that take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 minutes, half an hour. This is how you lose your whole day, right? So these are the processes you should be creating before any of the other ones, because they are the most recurring. And then as you create them, you've generated a positive compounding return on your time week after week after week. Now, of course, as you create that time, where should you be spending it? Creating longer processes, that is right. Okay, so that's why we start with the most recurring processes before anything else. Now, alongside that, why do we start with the most recurring and the most shortest processes? Well, of course, if it's short, it is probably not as impactful to your company. It is probably not a customer facing process or a lead generation process or a cash flow driving process, right? Because generally the most shortest processes are not that impactful. So therefore, if you're just beginning creating processes, attack the short ones before you attack the longer ones. Why? Because if it goes wrong, which it probably will, because you're practicing how to engineer processes, how to optimize them, how to duplicate the inputs, right? All of that. Now, if you're new to creating processes, you need to practice on processes that if they go wrong, which they will, they won't impact your company. That's why you start out using the most recurring processes to create those before anything else, and the most shortest ones so that you can practice it. And as you're practicing it, it will probably go wrong for the first 10 processes that you create. I mean, all of our clients now inside the Dream Team Intensive, they're fantastic process engineers. Developing processes is a skill set, just like anything else, right? So you need to practice it, and as you practice it on something that if it goes wrong, because it probably will go wrong the first few times that you create it, it's not going to harm your company. So that is the most shortest processes, and create a recurring compound ROI on your time through approaching the most recurring processes before you approach the most longest and the most urgent processes. Okay, so the order in which you should be prioritizing your processes should be the most recurring, the most shortest, right? These things you don't think are important really are, right? Could be small things like refreshing your email list, uploading something to social media. All these small 10-second, 2-minute tasks, half-an-hour jobs, 2-3-minute replies. This is what is draining your time and the time of your team, right? So create your recurring and most shortest processes before you create the most longest and the most urgent / important processes as well. All right, so that is it from me here in Adelaide. Hope you enjoyed this. As always, like and subscribe and comment below. Tell me some of the most shortest, most recurring processes that come to mind right away. I would love to hear from you in the comment section below. And yeah, I'll see you in the next training video soon.